It was Christmas morning and the phone rang. He said, we're sorry, but your father has passed away. And I was pissed. Pissed. What's going on, everybody? James here. So in this video, I kind of want to tell you my story on caring for my father and what it put me through, and just all the experiences and emotions and stuff that come along with that. Just in case somebody out there needs to hear some of this stuff, who's caring for an aging parent, and maybe even my stepsons when I'm in that position. Maybe this video will help them get through the situation. Now, it took me about 2.5 years to really get through this. We're getting ready to go on 3 years since my father passed away. So I might get a little emotional here, but I should be able to hold it together, because I'm kind of, everything's going to, when you think about it, it affects you. But I'm finally out of that stage where it was affected me subconsciously every day. And so I'm going to start from the very beginning. Growing up, we didn't have much. My dad, he started out, he was from a poor family also, and he ended up having polio. So from the age of 8 years old till he was 16, he was in the hospital with polio. He was bedridden for 8 years. That's crazy when you think about it. So I kind of, if I'm having a bad day or whatever, I kind of try to use that as inspiration. Like I said, I'll try to hold it mostly together. And then after he got out of the hospital, when he was 17, he actually lied about his age and joined the Marines. So after he got out of the hospital, which Shriners for Children paid for his surgery, so he was able to get the surgery he needed on his leg. And he's always had one foot that was bigger than the other and what have you. But he ended up going in the Marines at 17 years old after he was 8 years bedridden. That there is, like they kind of normally say, they don't make people like that anymore, right? Being this is 2024, probably more than ever nowadays. But so I'm trying to remember from pictures, because my dad didn't really talk too much about anything. Neither did my mom. So I think that he was born and kind of raised in the city. Then his parents moved. They moved to a farm. So they were poor. He had I think he was one of 6 children, and he was actually the last remaining one. So they didn't have much money, and he met my mom. She was fresh out of an abusive marriage, where she had ended up putting her children up for adoption. She had 4 outside before my dad, and in this abusive relationship. So when she got out of that, the children went up for adoption, and my mom was from an orphanage too. So she kind of, I guess could probably relate to what I can't go into that, because she never really talked too much about it. I did find one of my sisters years later on Facebook, so I'm friends with her on Facebook, which is kind of cool. But so they had me and my sister, and my dad had a son from a previous relationship who was my half brother that I actually knew and grew up with. He was 15 years older than I. So, we didn't have much. Things I remember from childhood, good and bad. My dad was a truck driver for a little bit for Koken's Manufacturing Company. They make the beauty and barber supplies. If you see the old vintage barber chairs and stuff that says Koken on them, He was the one that actually installed the chairs and the cabinets and stuff in barber shops and beauty shops. And he would travel the United States doing that. And when I was little, I would get to go with him. So that's where I got my love of road trips and what have you. And he was a carpenter. He built stuff. So that's where I got my knowledge of learning to woodwork and build stuff. The table I'm sitting at right now here, I actually built. But my dad was selfish. My parents were selfish, which raised selfish children. And so there wasn't really a lot going on. You know, there wasn't a lot of support or encouragement to do things. You know, we didn't know what college was. You know, we had bologna sandwiches for lunch. We lived with cockroaches, you know, in an apartment building with plaster falling off the walls and the ceilings. You know, just your normal ghetto, if you will, you know, low income housing and what have you. But my dad worked a full-time job. My mom was just a stay-at-home mom. And that's one of the things that I get on my, like when I do something wrong, I call myself a dumbass. And that kind of comes from my dad, because I remember growing up, he would call me a dumbass if I didn't catch on to things or did something stupid or whatever the case may be. So we weren't like close, you know, we weren't super close. We lived together for a long time, but like I said, everybody was in their own selfish world, if you will. And, you know, my dad would work, he'd go to the bar, he'd come home, eat, watch TV, go to bed, and repeat. Then on Saturdays, he would do like maybe some woodwork in the basement. He'd make his own fishing lures and things like that. And so I'd pick up little things from him here and there. But you know, they raised us and fed us, you know, even if it was just bologna sandwiches and what have you. You know, they didn't have my parents being, you know, and my dad, they didn't have no aspirations to do anything. And honestly, my dad couldn't do much, you know, being that he was in a hospital from 8 to 16 years old. He never really learned how to read or write. So my mom did a lot of that part of the relationship, the reading, the writing, the checkbook, things like that. He was just a hard worker and did his thing. So there's a lot of, you know, not a huge connection there. Now we're going to fast forward, because the rest is just kids growing up and kids being kids. You know, I get kicked out of the house once because of him, because we got in an argument, whatever. Of course, my mom stood up and said, no, that's not going to happen, or whatever. But we're going to fast forward to 2016. 2016, my older brother, who's 15 years older than I, was 60 years old, and he ended up passing away from pneumonia. He got sick, didn't go to the hospital soon enough, got the enlarged heart, and died in the hospital. So this was my father's firstborn. So he was devastated. At this point, my dad was, you know, he was pushing 80. He was going 75, 76, 77, somewhere in there. And my mom had already passed. My mom passed in 2009. So he had been pretty much living by himself. He was living upstairs from his sister's. His sister had passed away, but her husband, Uncle Ray, he stayed upstairs from him. So they always hung out together. And then one of my cousins, Uncle Ray's daughter, Linda, would help them out, go over there and do things for them. And at the beginning, I was going over there doing all the stuff after my mom passed away, you know, filling out the checkbook and paying his bills and things like that. I took over the role of my mom. So in 2016, when my brother passed away, my dad hit him really hard, and he started having heart problems again. He had already, at this time, every artery or whatever in his heart was already stented, you know, so he already had heart issues. He had a pacemaker, I guess, put in. I guess that's what it's called. he was a smoker most of his life, so he was on oxygen 24/7 also. But he went into the hospital almost like a heartbreak situation. So before he got out, you know, I said, I'm gonna move you in with us. So we turned the living room into a bedroom basically for my dad. We moved him in, and since I worked from home, I was able to care for him. So I moved my office within eyesight of him, so I could always keep an eye on him. During this, one thing I learned is if you give him his wrestling, his WWE, give him his John Wayne movies, give him Cardinal baseball, give him some action movies, and that's the easiest way to keep my dad entertained. But during all this, my dad was, you know, like I said, he didn't learn how to read or write, but during his stay here, he was always interested in like what I was doing, because I sell on the internet, I sell on eBay. And he was always very interested on what is this internet, and he could never really comprehend it. I would try to explain to him it's like a telephone but with pictures and with TV, but I don't think he ever really got it, because he was always constantly asking me, what do you know, trying to understand it, and it never really clicked with him. But so in it was like my brother passed December of 2016. When my dad got out of the hospital, it was January of 2017, so I moved him in. And it got difficult real quick, because caring for an older person's not the easiest thing in the world, and especially when it's somebody like your dad and you see them declining, it can be mentally hard to deal with. You know, we'd put on WWE and I would sit in there and watch wrestling with them and stuff. But, you know, cleaning up after your father, you know, because he can't go properly use the bathroom or whatever, for at least a son, doing that to, you know, helping out a father like that, it was hard. It was very hard. Just everything that comes along with it, you know, making sure they're, and my wife and two stepsons, they helped immensely during this process. I don't know if I could have been able to do it alone, honestly, because even with their help, it drove me to, I think, the darkest point in my life when it comes to depression and just overwhelmed with you know, the overall caring for an elderly parent and watching them decline, the day-to-day care that comes along with that. I ended up finding myself the lowest of low situations, and I mean, to the point where I didn't even want to go on anymore. I just wanted everything to end. But that ain't who I am. I'm not a quitter. So I just kept going and going. And believe it or not, it took a dog to help me get through that. So they say, like when you rescue a dog, it saves you. You don't save it. In this case, that's what happened. If you're watching this from one of my selling channels, you know who I'm speaking of. And that was Vern. And I'll talk about Vern's story maybe in another video. But this was a sticker I had made up of him. So That's when the channel was called My Boring Reseller Life. It's called The Great Reseller Life now, but change of headspace made me change the name. But that was the name of it when I was going through all this. So seeing, Vern's story play out on the internet, because they videotaped it, St. Louis Stray Rescue, and seeing what he came from and how he took to me, it felt like, and what's weird about it too is some weird things happened leading up to this. I guess I'll go a little bit deeper into that, because it kind of plays into what helped me get through helping my father. So growing up, St. Bernard was always my mother's favorite animal. She had stuffed animal of St. Bernard and what have you. And I personally never even seen a St. Bernard in real life. So, my mom's passed away, my dad's here, I'm taking care of him. And we had 2 greyhounds, and they had passed away. So it's been a while, and not too long actually, because Courtney was only by herself for about a month. So the 2 greyhounds passed away. The last one passed away about a month before we got Vern. But before we got him, I'm at the drive-thru at a bank, and the car next to me pulls up, and it's got a big St. Bernard with his head hanging out the window. And that was the first time I ever seen a St. Bernard in person. So I'm like, and I started talking about how I always wanted a St. Bernard because my mom always wanted one, and how, she loved them. Didn't think too much more of it. Then a few days later, I found this St. Bernard strap backpack that goes over the back of a St. Bernard. It had a St. Bernard picture on it, brand new in the package at the Goodwill bins, Goodwill outlet. So within a few days after seeing it, I find this, and I'm like, whoa, something's going on here, right? So I posted that on Facebook. A few days later, a friend, Linda, tagged me in that video of a St. Bernard being pulled out of a North St. Louis home on Vernon Street, that somebody just left him. The family just left him. He was skinny. And I just immediately knew, I've got to get this dog. So it kind of felt like my mom sent the dog. And I've gone into details about that before, but so I don't remember all the little details and nuances that went with it. So I'll try to make a separate video eventually of that. The nuances of how it felt like my mom sent Vern to help me. Because this dog changed my total outlook of caring for my dad. Don't get me wrong, it was still hard and difficult, and only got harder, as time went on, as he would he got worse and what have you. And my dad was a stubborn person, he's going to try to do everything himself first and foremost. So there's a lot of cleanup, situations and things like that. So I guess, if I didn't have the help, the little bit of help I had from my wife and sons, they would do the grocery shopping and made sure that we always had the food in the house and things like that. And if Vern wouldn't come into my life, it would have been a whole different situation, whole different scenario, whole different outcome, I think. Dealing with my brother's death, and then piling on taking care of my father. And then there was other things that kind of went on right before my brother's death. So there was a lot of stress across the board from a lot of different things. But COVID had hit, and it's 2021, and we've all went pretty well without having COVID in the house. We were very careful since my dad was older to try to make sure we didn't bring it into the house. But somehow it got into the house. And one evening, my dad went to go to the bathroom, and as he tried to stand up, he fell over in the bathroom. And we couldn't get him to stand up. He couldn't stand up. He didn't. My dad was just, his words were, "What's going on? What's happening to me?" And Courtney's standing up there wagging her tail at me. So he couldn't understand what was going on, and I couldn't get him to, he couldn't hold himself up. So I had to call an ambulance. They put him on the gurney, and they were going to take him to the hospital, and he was still confused, not knowing what was going on with his body. And I told him, you know, he's sick. They'll take you to the hospital, and we'll be up as soon as we can to see you. Well, he ended up having COVID, so they would not let us in. So the goal was he was going to be in the hospital 10 days, and then they could move him to a rehabilitation place. So we got all that set up, and 8 days in, it was Christmas morning, and I had been trying to call and Jan that day, but the hospital was always so busy. So finally, we called a little after midnight, called back, and finally got somebody. We want to check on my father. She goes, "Sure," and then she's on the phone with me, kind of talking, walking to his room, and the next thing I know, I hear her gasp and hang up the phone, and I'm like, you know, I knew that wasn't good. Well, actually, she was like, Bruce, and then she gasped and hung up the phone. So apparently they got the crash cart and everything in there, but he was already gone. So they called me back this Christmas morning, 2021, and told me he had passed away. So I said, can we at least come up there and see him? You know, they wouldn't let us see him with COVID. So I started living with the thought in my head that maybe he thought we just sent him there to die, since we couldn't come up, because he didn't understand the whole COVID thing and what was going on with that either. So I was worried that he thought we just sent him there to die, since we didn't visit. And so we finally got them to let us in the hospital to at least see him one last time. And then about a year later, Mr. Byrne comes up with bone cancer. So within 2 months after my dad passed, a year and 2 months, my support system's gone. So here I am, dealing with a lot of just mental sadness, depression, beating myself up. And then, you know, the dog that meant the most to me passed away. Like I said, we're going on 3 years of my dad passing. And it took me a good 2.5 years to really finally, you know, you never get over it, but to start living for yourself again. This is the first time I'm thinking about it in several months. Holding it together a lot better than I have before. But yeah. my goal in the story was to try to help somebody if you're going through it, and I don't know if I did that. Like, trying to come up with the details on how I got through it. It was hard. You don't get through it unscathed. I can say that much. It's going to affect you. It's going to hurt you, and it's going to take time to get past it. I should say, not over it, just get past it and start living for yourself again. At least with me. And what was it about? I want to say, the first things we started doing was trying to, slowly transforming the living room back into a living room, with new stuff, bought a new couch, a new TV, just trying to make the room new. I don't know if I've helped anybody, and I'm sorry. Because as I'm telling the story, how I am wondering how I made it through. How did I make it through? Maybe it's just the fact that you do make it through. You will get through it, even if you need to use a puppy as your support system. Another weird connection with the St. Bernard, though. So as of right now, about 8 months ago, my wife saw an ad for St. Bernard online that needed adopted. His family he was with since he was born, he was going on 2 years old. The wife of the family passed away, and he couldn't take care of the dog anymore. On top of it, ended up being the dog, the St. Bernard, ended up being diagnosed with epilepsy. So the medical bills and such were going to start being very expensive for this puppy. So knowing this, we went ahead and adopted the St. Bernard. And so now it's almost like I got somebody else to care for now, because I'm always watching out for him, making sure that he's okay, because he could break into a seizure at any moment type of thing. We think we've got it mostly under control, but to kind of go back to the point of the connection with St. Bernards and my mother. Before I was born, my mom had a dog named Pee-wee, and she always talked about this dog. She still even kept the dog bowl and the collar. She loved this dog. And I still have that dog bowl and collar right next to their urn of my parents. And it says Pee-wee right on it. And the name of the St. Bernard was Pee-wee. And that was his name given when he was little. That's what they called him. So it almost felt like a connection with my mom again with the St. Bernard, just as Vern did. It's very surreal and weird situation. Like I said, I'll try to remember more of the details. I'm sure I posted on Facebook, so if I do a history search on Facebook, I can start taking some notes and give you guys the actual, a little bit more details into the story of the connections. But I think another thing that helped me a lot is these videos on the channel at the time was called My Boring Reseller Life. And when I was doing shipping items I sold, I would talk about what I felt. So getting a lot of support from people online that I didn't even know was a huge helper in keeping me going and getting me past all the problems and the, the sadness and what have you. So it took a lot of support to get me through it. Family, puppy, internet strangers. It's crazy. So if you are going through it, I would say get as much support as you can, even if it's just words to make you hang on one more day, to keep pushing one more day. I was always told, because my wife has health issues, that I'm a good nurse, but it's very, even for a good nurse, taking care of someone 24/7 for 4 or 5 years straight, it's difficult, it's draining, it's depressing. And definitely need support to get through it, even if it's, like I said, strangers on the internet. Even if you have to make a video and nobody's going to see it, expressing yourself about how you're feeling, what you're going through, do it, because somebody somewhere at some time will stumble across that video and it may just help them also. But expressing yourself and getting out your feelings, your sadness, it really helps you as the person, relieving yourself, because it's almost like you're in therapy, if you will. You got somebody to talk to, even if that somebody is just the screen on your phone for the moment that you're talking. So yeah, we're headed toward Christmas 24. It's gonna be almost 3 years since he's been passed, which is crazy, because it don't seem like that long. Yet, it took so long to get past it. It's a weird balance there. On one hand, it feels like yesterday. On another hand, it felt like it took forever to start worrying about myself again. Because when you're in those situations, your own self takes a back seat. A lot of times, at least with me too, your own health takes a back seat, because you're basically dedicating your life to taking care of somebody. For like my boys and stuff, I think for me, hopefully it'll be easier if my boys are ever in that situation and I'm there, because just get like a virtual headset and put it on me and let me go. Let me sit there in a virtual world and explore around or something. That'd be my Cardinals baseball game, if you will, something like that. But I guess the moral is it's going to be hard no matter what. Very emotional, very hard, very draining. So find all the support you can. Express yourself as much as you can. Don't feel guilty about expressing yourself. Like on this video, I don't need sympathy. I'm past it. I didn't ask for sympathy before. I was just doing it for expressions, but the feedback and the words helped at that time. So don't be afraid. Don't even be afraid to ask for it. Help if you need it. Because as I learned, it takes a lot out of you. So you need to really find a way to replenish yourself as much as you can during those situations. At first, of course, it was a little easier at the very beginning because he could get around better and what have you. And we took him on a vacation one time where I go, what's one place you want to see that you never got to see? And he said, those heads on the mountain. And you mean the presidents on the mountain? Now I forget what it's called. How can I forget what it's called? Mount Rushmore, duh. So we all went on a family trip to Mount Rushmore so he could see that in person. But yeah, it will be hard. It will be difficult. I guess understand that it's going to be hard. Prepare yourself if you can. I like to say, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. And that's the best way you can handle it. All right, I don't know if anything I said helped you guys in any way, and that's what this video is for, so I'm sorry if I failed at that. I'll try to do better next time. I'm not a very good storyteller. All right, I'm gonna go and get back to work. He hasn't come out usually they follow me everywhere, and he hasn't come outside this whole 40 minutes I've been out here, so now I gotta go check on him, make sure he's okay. So, and then get back to work. So, all right. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and hopefully there's something there you can use. And I'll see you all in the next video. Later.